Hi, I'm Dr. Carol Francis. I'm going to talk about abuse for a moment. It's really very confusing to get out of an abusive relationship once you've gotten deeply immersed in it. So it's best to be able to read those signs as quickly as you can. We call them red flags, don't we? And so sometimes we don't want to see the red flag. And in fact, that's one of the signs that maybe you need to be paying attention to what type of relationship you're in. If you feel like you cannot dare to be clear-headed enough to see and investigate what red flags are present when you're getting to know another individual, it's very possible that you're walking into something that you need to step back from. Not that the relationship's necessarily bad, but you need to be able to have your own clarity about another person. What's interesting, and what's kind of fun as well in the right circumstance, is during the first 3 to 4 months of any relationship, there's lots of sexual energy and interest in another person. We call it the phase of limerence. We're not clear-headed. We don't want to be clear-headed. And you might as well enjoy not being clear-headed if there's no abuse taking place. Instead, that's the time where we're idealizing the other person. They're idealizing us. We're imagining the ideal relationship with all the encumbrances and awkwardness. And the fact is, if it's going well for the first 3 to 4 months, you're going to invest some time in going beyond those 3 to 4 months, chances are. But realize that after the 3 to 4 months is over with, you enter into a different phase. Before, you're like this and loving it and just all sorts of different ways in which you're just very, enamored with the other person. That's a wonderful time. After 3 to 4 months, what we find is that two individuals begin kind of being exhausted. They realize they have to pay the bills and go to work and do school or whatever chores they have to do. They have to sleep. They have everyday life. They're exhausted, whatever it is. And they begin to realize that they have to come into their own separate identity, that this relationship's been great, but I'm losing myself, and they have to come to understanding who they are as separate individuals. Well, this is the second phase of a normal relationship, but this is also the phase in which we also see abusiveness as well. So during these two phases, if you walk into a situation after the 3 to 4 months and you are afraid to look for red flags, know that your fear to look for red flags is probably a sign that you're afraid to be clear-headed about what's going on. It's okay for you to be clear-headed. Now, once you start being clear-headed, as clear-headed as you can, which doesn't mean that you're this judgmental bitch, excuse me. It doesn't mean that you are like on every little detail and it's like this person just grinding on you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your ability to say, what is the quality of this person's character? What's the quality of this person's ability to be responsible and respectful? What's this person's ability to live life functionally? These are the red flags you look for, because you're looking for a relationship, not just a sexual attraction or fun or fling. But looking for a relationship, you need someone who can actually carry out all the various dimensions of a relationship. Not just conversation, but that's important. Not just fun, that's important. Not just sex, that's important. But the ability to hold up their end of the chores, carry on life, pay for bills, earn money, get up, be functional, etc., etc. So if you're afraid to look for the red flags about those dimensions of things, you're probably walking into a situation that's going to cause you problems. So stop. Stop being afraid of looking for red flags. Go ahead, look for red flags. And they need to start looking for red flags as well. So know that you're going to be a little bit scrutinized and judged and kind of say, okay, well, we've fallen out of limerence, and now we'll see if we can fall into love. And that falling into love after limerence, which most of us think is falling into love, then we're actually trying to get to know the other person, see them, and then if we genuinely like who they are, it's a little different, because now we're clear-headed, and so are they clear-headed about us. It's at that time when we still want to be our best, because we always want to be our best, and we want them to be able to be at their best too. But if you're in an abusive situation, and you can't see the red flags, that other person actually might be spending so much time now judging you, getting you disarmed off of any sort of the disagreements or wishes that you have or complaints that you have, or any time you kind of look for red flags. If that person begins to attack you at about the time that you're beginning to wonder or question, they may try to throw you into a position, this may be unconscious by the way, it might be very conscious, throw you in a position where you're feeling worse and worse and worse about yourself, so you are disarmed and unable to see them clearly. If someone doesn't want you to see them clearly, they can make you so clouded with your own vexing self-worth issues or wondering if you're all flawed that you're not really very clear about them. So it's, again, important you're clear about your flaws So you can be clear about their flaws, and if they're clear about their flaws and working on them, and you're clear about your flaws and working on them, that's pretty evolved. But if they're trying to disarm you about looking at theirs and blame everything on you, big, big red flag. Here's this word blame. The word blame means that one individual thinks they're 1, superior, 2, flawless, 3, they have no intentions on working on any insight-oriented aspects of changing themselves, and they're hoping you're going to take the whole burden of anything that ever goes wrong in their relationship. Well, since things that go wrong in a relationship are usually because of the 2 people and not just because of one, then it makes it a little bit difficult. But if one person takes over responsibilities, too responsible for everything that goes wrong, then this person gets to dominate that individual and say, yep, you're to blame. Anything wrong is your fault. And if this person buys into the blame, then you know you really are throwing yourself into an abusive situation potentially. Even if this person didn't intend to do it, maybe they started blaming you because they found it worked, because they didn't really want to do the work, they're not that evolved or whatever, maybe they didn't want to become abusers, but they nonetheless turn the dynamic of the situation into where one person is pounded down with blame and takes it, and the other person is the one doing the pounding and the blaming and gets away with it. So this person right here who's pounded down with the blame needs to blossom, needs to wake up, try to be as clear as you can about who you are and who they are, and realize that you have just been suppressed or oppressed by blame as opposed to clarity. Again, that word clarity. Being clear about you, you're not perfect. Being clear about the other person, they're not perfect. Being clear about the situation, and now have an image in your mind of what it would be like to have a healthy relationship. Not perfect, but healthy. And in your mind, begin to form that as strongly as you possibly can. And who would you be in that healthy relationship? Who would you be who would take your blame as is clear-headed, not as is imprisoning and enslaving? And who would your partner be who could take the blame for situations, who was clear-headed and loving and respectful as well? You need to form inside of your own imagination a healthier situation before you can begin to contrast the circumstances that you're in with what inside of you could actually create. Next, one of the things that keep people really attached to the abusive situation is the urge to rescue, remedy, and repair. I think these are very noble traits. Rescue, remedy, and repair. Well, that's what a healer does. That's what a mother does. That's what an emergency team member does. They rescue. They try to heal and remedy. That's what a medical doctor or a nurse does. These are actually pretty cool human qualities. Rescue, remedy, and repair. They're actually pretty powerful. But when you begin to administer the bandages to someone that wants to slice you open, then now you're being attacked by the person that you want to assist. And chances are, if you were in an abusive relationship, they will only respond to your urge to rescue, remedy, and repair to either keep you held in the relationship, trapped and oppressed, or will reject any attempt that you have and make you feel even worse about your urge to do that, or make you feel even more powerless to make anything change in your life, including rescuing yourself. So remember, if you have an urge to rescue, remedy, and repair, do it with yourself. Now, some people might say this is selfishness, and I say that this is self-respect. And as you self-love and self-respect, and you can rescue, remedy, and repair yourself, then you can shift yourself into clarity and shift yourself away from being abused. Now, what's really tricky is when an abuser takes the urge to remedy, repair, rescue, and says, oh yes, what I'm going to do, and they may or may not do this consciously, and that's when they're not doing it consciously, it's harder to sense. When they're doing it consciously, you can kind of feel the power of their conniving manipulation. So what they'll do is they will confess and take the blame for a high emotional period of time. Oh, I'm so sorry, you're absolutely right, I'm awful, I promise you I'll be better. So you give them a few opportunities. You see how long they can sustain the urge to evolve. You see what profound infrastructure pieces of repair they do. Do they stop drinking? Do they stop abusing their body? Do they start learning how to talk politely and respectfully to you? Do they take care of their responsibilities? Are they going to different types of therapies or doing things for their well-being that are clear and honest and at the highest level functioning that they possibly can do? Do they continue and sustain that their guilt, which it's not always bad, their guilt actually makes them shift who they are and evolve who they are over a sustained period of time? No one's going to be perfect, and that's when it gets really confusing. Here, a little bit of math here. The regression line of improvement, if it's steady, and this as opposed to suddenly they're perfect, which never happens, but they're steadily improving, that's so different than when they improve is a spike and they go back to old ways. Now when they improve is a spike and they've been really regretful and they take your remedy and your repair and your rescue and they use it, they've actually taken you and they've pulled you in to the system even deeper, so eventually when they stop improving, they can oppress you now, because now your heart is even more bought in to the process of rescuing. This is where we learned the term codependence and enabling. So codependence and enabling became so entrapped and snarled, woven in intricately into the process of this person's abusiveness, their sorrow, abusiveness, their sorrow, abusiveness sort of cycle. Now, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you're abusive and they calm down. They blame the other person. You try to act really good and perfect, and so they seem to be a little calmer because now you're like an obedient dog, and then suddenly they rank on you for some really insignificant reason, but they make it really big, and you begin to buy into it. And it's really big, and you work really hard to not make them angry, and then they're kind of nice for a period of time, and then they suddenly spike again, and these type of cycles also pull you in. So you know that you are pulled into this. Now, B.S. Skinner talked about this in terms of conditioning, so emotional conditioning. So I just want you to step back for a moment and look at this for a moment. You are more powerfully conditioned to do something if you have intermittent positive reinforcement, which means if on an unscheduled, erratic pattern you are given good things, then you tend to sustain deprivation or bad things longer, because you know eventually that good thing is going to come. So you kind of wait and live for that good thing, and you try all sorts of things and actions and behaviors, and then you get the good thing and you go, oh good, I'm now in control of the good thing, and then the good thing goes away, and then you try all these different things, and you get this good thing without really knowing why, but you think you know why. You think this is actually the strongest form of conditioning an individual to stay adherent, attached to a situation. So know that if you are being abused, you may be getting this intermittent positive reinforcement that's not about them being contrite for a moment or guilty for a moment, or even saying that they're going to be better for a moment. Maybe that you just got that spike of a smile, or they loved you, or they touched you nicely, or they gave you something. And in that moment, you have to realize you have just taken the bait, and a part of you wants to buy it. Next, realize that every human being has the inclination to keep the same familiar path in hopes that they'll be able to improve it, because familiarity just feels, well, more secure. And if security is something that's important to you at this point in your life, and it's a really important commodity as opposed to enthusiasm or love or evolving or adventure, then you need to know that security is probably going to keep you attached to a familiar situation that may be actually abusive, familiarly abusive. Next, powerlessness. If you believe you're powerless to do anything about your situation, the truth is that you are not. Let me say it again. If you believe that you are powerless about the situation, you're lying to yourself. You're believing a mal-truth. Maybe they made you feel powerless. Maybe you were made to feel powerless as a kid. Maybe you were taught to be compliant and oppressed by parents that made you obey, and obedience was above all else, is the element of what you could be praised for growing up. So now you're compliant, but you're oppressed, you're enslaved, you're powerless. If you believe that you're powerless, I need to tell you, you are not powerless. You have power, but you have power you don't know about. You have power that you haven't allowed yourself to imagine. You have power that's way beyond your circumstance. You don't know it. You have the power to leave. And yes, there'll be ramifications, but you have the power to leave. There are resources out there that are available on the internet, walking down the path to a neighbor's house, going to some sort of authority that you trust, and not all authorities are trustworthy, as you may have experienced over and over in your life. So don't believe the internal message that says to you, I'm totally powerless, there's nothing I can do about my well-being. You may not be able to do anything about the other person, but you can do something about your well-being. And as soon as you tell yourself, okay, I'm not powerless, but I'm not aware of what my power is, I'm going to start looking for what possibilities there are that are actually a part of my power that I haven't been seeing so far, or I haven't been exercising, or I've been afraid to look at. So you need to tell yourself first, I do have power, I just don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to find it. And then begin to accumulate it, begin to understand what they are, begin to think about it, feel about it, groom yourself to imagine that you can be this evolved individual in a really good, healthy situation for yourself, for your loved ones, but not for your abuser. Chances are you're not going to be able to rescue, repair, and remedy your abuser. They're probably stuck in their mire of whatever's going on for whatever decades and decades of issues that have accumulated inside of them, or just basically just meanness. But you can do something for yourself and other individuals that may be victimized in your situation. So be aware, you do have power. Now it's time to wake up to what that power is. And feel free to write me or contact me. Dr. Carol Francis, clinical psychologist, clinical hypnotherapist, and don't let someone hypnotize you into believing that you have nothing or you have no power, because that's a big lie. Bye for now. Take care of yourself.